Colin's Last Stand merchandise has finally arrived. I've partnered with Declaration Clothing to bring you high-quality shirts, stickers, and even a poster, all proudly made right here in the United States. If you're interested in checking out my wares and supporting independent, ad-free political and historical content like CLS, please head on over to Declaration Clothing at declarationclothing.com. And yes, I know I look damn good. Now, on with the show. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Colin's Last Stand right here on YouTube. My name is Colin Moriarty. I hope you and yours are doing very well and that this video finds you happy and tranquil. Today I want to focus on this kind of take a knee, kneeling, national anthem, whatever kind of situation's going on in the National Football League right now. And really with this Colin Kaepernick kind of derived situation that's really taken on a life of its own, largely thanks to the stupidity of Donald Trump. I feel like I'm of two minds. I feel like I understand multiple perspectives about this. So I figured that what I would do is just kind of give you a video explaining some points of view that I have, not really giving you a narrative, not really telling you a story from point A to point B to point C. I'm not going into the history of how this all happened, but really about what's going on right now and how I feel like this doesn't really serve any sort of purpose at all. But at the same time, I understand why people are protesting, but I understand why people are upset. So let's just jump right into the video. I'm a huge football fan. As many of you know, I follow the New York Jets with an almost religious devotion, especially telling of my fandom since they are typically terrible, and yet I pay hundreds of dollars a year to voluntarily watch every game every season. Literally every game. The NFL pretty much dominates my falls and winters each year. In addition to the Jets games, I watch 4 other games a week, play fantasy football for money, and read endless news stories, rankings, and analysis. This is the first year Colin's Last Stand has existed, and it's the most demanding job I've ever had. But I've even stacked my days with work further, getting my Monday videos done earlier so that on Sundays, I can just sit on the couch for 12 hours, stuff my fat face, and enjoy the day. The reason I'm taking the time to illustrate this picture for you is simple. I speak to you as a real, true fan of the game, and a real, true fan of the NFL in particular. Like so many people sounding off on the take a knee fiasco, I am the NFL's audience. Without football each year, I feel like I'd be a little sadder, a little more bored, a little more out of sorts. And without people like me, the NFL wouldn't exist as a thriving enterprise. Yet it's disappointing that politics now plague the National Football League the way politics plague just about anything else. You can't turn anywhere without having politics shoved down your throat. Thought you'd watch the Emmys and escape it? Wrong. Thought you'd go to the movies and escape it? Wrong. Thought you'd go to a concert and escape it? Wrong. Thought you'd play a video game and escape it? Wrong. Thought you'd sit on your sofa, turn on CBS, NBC, Fox, or ESPN, take in a football game on Sunday, Monday, or Thursday, and escape it? Well, you get the idea. It's frustrating. There's simply no refuge anymore, and it sucks for all of us, regardless of your political ideology. It's exhausting, it's unnecessary, and it's inherently divisive. But I also think that everybody, all of us, have in some way lost the plot, especially when it comes to this Colin Kaepernick-derived kneeling during the national anthem situation. And I think that's reminiscent of many mass protests in the past, some of them well-meaning but flawed, others nefarious and even sometimes violent. In Chicago in 1968, people protesting the Vietnam War, a worthy protest, lost control at the Democratic National Convention, handing the election to Richard Nixon in the process. The Tea Party, T being an acronym for taxed enough already, rallied conservatives and centrists to a common cause and won the Republicans the House in 2010. Then they went completely off the deep end, torpedoing their future effectiveness. Occupy Wall Street started as a could-be cogent debate about the excesses of American capitalism and wealth inequality, but quickly fell prey to stupidity, being more noteworthy for making socialism a meme than affecting any change. And obviously, everyone's over-the-top reactions to Trump in 2016, led by a shamelessly biased press and a ridiculous overwrought echo chamber, delivered the White House to the most disastrous presidential candidate in modern American history. To varying degrees, we've been in situations like this before. They are familiar, and they are constant. Taking a knee has, likewise, already lost its significance, not only for those who are protesting by doing so, but for those who are protesting the protest. Like the Tea Party and Occupy Wall Street, you won't find any sort of real coherence or unity in the message. You won't find people on the same page. You won't even see many people understanding where the kneeling came from to begin with. Many forget that Colin Kaepernick first sat, and was told by a Navy SEAL that he should instead kneel, so as to at least be more respectful. Some kneel over racial inequality. Some kneel over errors in policing. Some kneel because their teammates kneel. Some kneel because they don't want to feel left out. And some lock arms with those kneeling but stay standing. It's all a confusing mess of lost symbolism. This entire saga is a glimpse into the American soul from all angles. We have no idea what we're protesting, we have no idea what we're counter-protesting, and we have no idea what we're even angry about. All we know is that we're angry about something. Maybe we're angry about everything. Such is life in the US in 2017. Listen, I love politics more than your average bear, and I can live and breathe politics and history and read about it every day and absorb it and watch TV shows, but even I need a break. And the NFL was kind of that respite for me. I could look forward to the NFL, and this politicization of the NFL is not necessarily that new. I remember watching Sunday Night Football and having Bob Costas deliver a halftime kind of message about gun control, and I was like, okay, that's weird. We're supposed to be watching football. This is supposed to be one of the things that actually binds us together as a society. So I just am a little upset about it from that perspective, because I have nowhere to hide now either. None of us have anywhere to hide. This is kind of our new reality. But my major question from here is, what is the point of all of this? Where does all of this go? And frankly, I don't think anyone really knows. All I know is that it's sad that it's gotten to this point where there's a political litmus test for anything at all. It's tiring. Maybe I should have gotten this out of the way earlier, but I suppose now is as good a time as any. I don't have a fundamental problem with anyone refusing to stand during the national anthem, nor do I think that quote-unquote disrespecting the flag is something that shouldn't be allowed. I stand and recite our anthem at sporting events, and I think the American flag is something to revere and pay homage to. But I'm not everyone. Arbitrary lines cannot be drawn for patriotic symbols when everything else is supposed to be immune, and rightfully so. It's not ironically consistent with American values. This brings us right back to the 1990s and the lame argument over burning the flag. Some people wanted to literally pass a constitutional amendment, something so incredibly hard that it's borderline impossible to do, to ban flag burning. That always struck me as weird. Who cares if a person burns the American flag? What does that really symbolize? It's a gesture. It's ultimately meaningless. So is standing for the anthem. But so what if someone else doesn't? It's a non-violent protest well within a person's rights here in the United States, and it doesn't affect me a single iota, nor you. American patriotism isn't a religion, and it doesn't require orthodoxy at all costs. My definition of what we might term American values places a much higher precedence on a person's ability to express him or herself however he or she wants, as long as no one is being injured and property rights and norms are being respected, over some purity test about a national symbol and a national song. These arguments that people fought and died for the flag resonate with me, but if you look at it from a different angle, I'd say they fought and died for our ability to freely exercise our rights. That includes burning the flag, and that includes kneeling during the anthem. Ultimately, you're either for free speech and expression, or you're against it. As Donald Trump learned the hard way, attempting to stymie rights only makes people take a more hardened position. I guarantee you that half of the players taking a knee this past Sunday were only doing it to make Trump mad, and in that position, I may have done the same. I guarantee you that this coming Sunday, the same thing will happen, and that's fine. There are few things more worthy of protection than the right to speak out, even if you don't agree with the underlying message. Even if there's no underlying message at all. The uncomfortable truth is that while I might be more of a so-called patriot than another person, or that I might show more respect for national iconography and tradition, I'm no more of an American than a fellow citizen that chooses to exercise his or her freedoms in a way some of us might find unsavory. Many of us point at violent protests happening around the country and express varying levels of concern. We look at Ferguson, Charlottesville, Berkeley, Baltimore, and other social flashpoints, and we say that's what you're not supposed to do. I totally agree. You're a pretty dim person if you destroy your own town or city, loot your neighbors' homes and stores, and injure those around you in the name of social justice, especially when you're riled up over half-truths and misconceptions, as was obviously the case in Ferguson. But there's another side to this coin. People protest peacefully, and we tell them they can't do that either? To me, this strikes me as a double standard, and one really worth marinating on for a while. If a person can neither yell loudly and destroy things, nor take a knee and remain silent, then what exactly is a person allowed to do? Anyone who thinks our country and our flag is above reproach is lying to themselves. It's the height of delusion. Now, I'm not naive. I understand that as employees of large companies, which is what each of the 32 NFL clubs are, players can be released or waived for any reason, including if a coach, owner, or someone in the front office doesn't so much as like a person's haircut. This is especially true in the NFL, where contracts aren't typically guaranteed, and where there's an endless overflow of desperate fringe players ready to take another person's roster spot. I'm not saying that teams don't have the right to take action against a squeaky wheel. It's also clear that at a time when NFL stadiums aren't selling out and TV ratings are sluggish, it's quite weird for teams to allow its players to alienate fan bases which seem at least partially incensed by what's happening. People can and should allow their money and their eyeballs and their feet to travel to new forms of entertainment if they're so deeply offended by what's happening. But perhaps it's worth noting that we didn't have to let it get to such an absurd place to begin with, where fans and players are openly antagonizing one another, owners have to make empty statements, and coaches look mortified. The sad fact of the matter is we're going to be kind of stuck with the schadenfreude in the NFL and with politics as a whole for a very long time. It's just not going to go anywhere. It's just emblematic, as I said, of the United States, of where we are right now, how we're at each other's throats. But as usual, both sides really don't have it right. And I think that instead of trying to change the reality on the ground, which is what some people are concentrating on, I say we should just try to see what's going on and what we can learn from it and what we can pull out of it to move forward in the most peaceful and productive way. It goes without saying that African Americans in the United States continue to be victimized by racism. That's not to say that the African American community is wholly discriminated against. It's clearly not. Nor is it to say that police aren't doing their jobs properly. They mostly are, and they are by and large the bravest people in our society doing work most of us would never want to do. My major question in this regard is, are hundreds and hundreds of well-off to filthy rich African Americans in the NFL the proper messengers? My answer is yes, because people look up to them and listen to them. But without a unified message, which they don't have and will never have, it seems like a waste of time, and it seems to injure our national spirit that's already on life support. Colin Kaepernick's move to bring attention to various racial plights, inequalities, and indiscretion seems, from my perspective, to be stagnating, because everyone's dug in, everyone is running in their own separate direction, and everyone seems to be losing the camaraderie necessary to change things. This is yet another us versus them situation, so nothing good is ultimately going to come out of it. I, for one, don't think Colin Kaepernick lacks an NFL job due to racism. I just don't. And this has, in itself, exacerbated the entire situation. I think that he's a reasonable backup-level quarterback that could probably be on an NFL roster, but at what cost? What fan base outside of maybe San Francisco is going to embrace him? Since when did a backup quarterback who, on NFL rosters, is supposed to remain quiet, prepared, and invisible, justify an inevitable media circus and guaranteed fan backlash? In many ways, the NFL is actually an amazing example of colorblindness that we as Americans can learn a thing or two from, and NFL coaches would sacrifice their testicles to sniff a Super Bowl. If Kaepernick could help a team win, he'd be on a team. Period. Accusing a system of coaches, front office staff, and players of systemic racism in a league that's made up of 70% black men, 12 times higher than their representation in the overall population, is dumb, frankly. At the league minimum salary, every player on an NFL roster is in the dreaded 1%, even if the average career lasts only 3 seasons. These are facts that rightly don't sync up with the perceived reality of injustice, at least aimed at these messengers. That's worth noting, whether you think it actually matters or not. I can't help but notice how visceral and evolving the situation is, both for individuals and for entire teams. The Pittsburgh Steelers are a great example of this. This past Sunday, the Steelers' entire team remained in the locker room during the anthem, except for one player, Alejandro Villanueva, an offensive lineman who served 3 tours in Afghanistan. The next day, the team's quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger, showed remorse over he and the team remaining in the locker room, while Villanueva expressed remorse that he seemed to have sold his team out. Interestingly, Villanueva's jersey was a bestseller in the NFL after what he did, which shows you where the fans are. Either way, the entire situation is so perfectly emblematic of the confusion behind the scenes of people not having any idea what to do, why they're doing it, or how they will be perceived when they act, one way or the other. In other words, this is a situation very much in flux, so it's unlikely to have a positive outcome. I don't know where we go from here. I don't know if any of this ultimately means anything. Maybe this whole protest will fade into our memories and we'll watch a 30 for 30 about it in a couple of decades. Or maybe it turns into a civil rights movement of our time. It's impossible to say. All I know is that I see a situation that makes no sense from pretty much any perspective. It doesn't make sense from a political perspective since there is no unity. It doesn't make sense from a business perspective since it's hurting the bottom line. It doesn't make sense from a counter-protest perspective since people should have the right of self-expression. And it doesn't make sense from an interpersonal perspective, which is perhaps the most important perspective of all. Because it's just another way we're divided. Another reason to be at each other's throats. Another reason to distrust your neighbors, friends, family, coworkers, and peers. I think people are so wrapped up in symbolism that they're losing sight of what matters most. We are eroding away as a unified entity. This isn't the first reminder. It absolutely won't be the last. It's not even the most stark reminder. It's just something else on this incessantly bumpy road we find ourselves on. And unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be an exit in sight for many miles. Well, football fan or not, I'll be very interested to see what you guys have to say about this video, so sound off in the comments below. I'll be down there with you guys chatting as I usually am. Please thumb up the video if you liked it, thumb it down if you didn't, share it with friends and family, and, let them know about the majesty and the might of Colin's Last Stand. All right, I've wasted enough of your time. You have other things to do today, I am sure. I will see you next time for more Colin's Last Stand. Keep on learning.